I'm delicate with it, because in one way it's like, dude, get your shit together, man. You look at this part of your life and look what it's doing. So one part of me just comes, full throttle and lays it out, because sometimes that's what it takes for a narcissist to even start to think about it and really start to look in the mirror about taking responsibility for their own lives, Beth. So
if there's an empath listening, what would you say to them?
Well, first and foremost,
in a relationship with a narcissist.
Yeah, first and foremost, your safety and wellness are sanctosanct. There's no even taking any chance related to issues related to your own safety. And let's keep in mind that there's the idea of physical safety, but there's emotional safety. And if there's any indication where you're tiptoeing or you're swallowing or you're bearing, these things can go on for years. It's moving to an edge of either a major health crisis, emotional crisis, or other crisis in your life. So numero uno, pay attention, take care of number one, first and foremost.
I feel like there's so much here for anyone, even if you're not in an empath narcissist entanglement. But if you are, it is something that will either crush you or catapult you, and it's your choice. And I think the information shared here from both of us, coming from different perspectives and having a lot of evolution and doing a lot of our own deep inner work,
indeed,
of the show. Welcome to part 3 of this Empath Narcissist series. If you've been with us through parts 1 and 2, you already know this work is not about labeling or blaming. It's about awakening. In this final conversation, Adam and I move beyond understanding the dynamic and into integration. Today, we're exploring what happens after awareness, after boundaries, and after the collapse of old identities. Because this is where both the empath and the narcissist are invited into accountability, humility, and sovereignty. We'll talk about spiritual narcissism, shadow integration, and what real healing looks like when love is no longer entangled with control or self-abandonment. This conversation is not here to condemn anyone. It's here to serve consciousness. Whether you identify more with the empath, the narcissistic pattern, or somewhere in between, my intention is that something in this dialogue meets you exactly where you are and gently guides you home to yourself. And if it does, I would love for you to share and like the video. Thanks for being here. Welcome everyone back to part 3 of our series about the empath narcissist entanglement. We've had some really juicy segments, so if you haven't already tuned in to the others, please do. Part 1, part 2 are incredible. We go through a lot about the making of a narcissist, the making of an empath, and we get into some pretty deep details about what that feels like, looks like, and the experience of it all. And so welcome back, Adam. I appreciate having you here.
Good to be back, and good to continue this journey with you and everyone listening. Look forward to our time today.
So today we are going to, again, be in divine flow with what needs to come through for ourselves and for the viewers. What we wanted to talk about, though, or at least start with, is, as we said in series 1, part 1, that you are a self-proclaimed narcissist and also a self-proclaimed spiritual narcissist. So I find that so fascinating. And I think in today's time, when there are a lot of awakening wonders out there, that there is this spiritual narcissism that's happening. So I would love to hear more about your transition, if you will,
Yes.
How you went from a narcissist to a spiritual narcissist and what that actually means and looks like.
Yeah, no, it has a lot to do with narcissism, the characteristics of narcissism, and seemingly what I found, Beth, in the just becoming first and foremost aware that I had narcissistic tendencies, and then ultimately behaving and acting very much in line, paradoxically, with those narcissistic tendencies. And then the journey to owning that, and really the self-reflective part of my own healing journey to recognize how that is so severely impacted my life and my relationships, personal relationships, relationships with my children, relationships in business, was so profound. And then taking the journey. But the stepping off point was really to take that, let's just say, the spiritual journey, take the journey to really heal my life, to awaken to what I now know as my greater potential or greater truth of who I am as a man, as a heart and soul, and in what that entailed. And that really fulfilled and played into much of the last 20 years of my life. I'm now 64, so it really played into these last couple decades. And the initial phases of this, Beth, that were very indulgent, and meaning the pursuit of why I had felt this way, and the pursuit to understand what it meant to become more conscious in our life, to heal our lives. And that pursuit for me was really no different than anybody that goes on this great journey, this hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell would refer to it as, to heal their lives, to find the joy and love of who they are. And that was anything from reading everything I could read, to attending retreats, to going on vision quest in my particular case, to becoming a deep student and study of Jungian psychology, and diving deep into the scientific aspects of spirituality and quantum physics. So I became very indulgent in that part of the journey, and very almost obsessive, to be quite frank with you. And that became the next phase, where I was in my own healing. Yes, I was experienced things in my life, and the world was mirroring people and places in my life where I still needed to grow and whatnot. And it's not to say that being selfish there's anything wrong with it, because we need to be selfish a bit in our healing journey. We need to tend to our fragility, so to speak. And, so that's what I was doing. But it really became, in the later stages of it, it became indulgent.
Indulgent from a spiritual perspective, or
yes,
just say more about that.
No, it was very indulgent, because it essentially was very myopically focused on my own spiritual journey. And that really played into a relationship that I had at the time.
Yeah.
And
how did it impact that relationship?
Well, it impacted that relationship in numerous ways. One was, we're all in our journey, and we're at different places in our journey. And the projection of my own journey onto the other person was one that, was maybe a little more controlling still, a little more manipulative, maybe more, where are you at in your own journey? Are you tending to this part of your own life? And so these were continuations of narcissistic behavior. And although the spectrum of the narcissistic behavior had declined and softened dramatically, they were still present, but then they became present from the perspective of spirituality.
Okay.
And, and then that relationship didn't work out for that reason and other reasons. And then I found myself in another relationship that was quite similar.
Okay.
That still engaged with this idea of my own spiritual narcissism and wanting to help the other person.
Yeah.
And this is when the empath part of me started to show up.
Yeah.
So it started to creep in where, oh, I can help this person, or I can change this person to even help me in my own journey. So it was still the manipulative, subtly, unconsciously, stealth, as we spoke about in our last conversation, Beth.
Yeah.
But it started to creep in. So we can go a lot more with spiritual narcissism, but it became very evident to me later in that journey that I was still engaging in this behavior, and I needed to go deeper into my own pain and into my own darkness to even awaken from the idea of spiritual narcissism. And I'm observing it in the world and many other people that are on the path in numerous ways, not just in some of the ways we discussed, but it is revealing itself. From the new world, the spiritual narcissism.
Yeah.
I don't want to laugh about it, but I'm kind of laughing at myself now. For my own indulgence and my own continuation with that.
So I really like that you bring that up, because I want to go back to say that as we awaken, we are, whether you're an empath or you're a narcissist or somewhere in between, you are always going to be working with the light and the shadow aspect of that. Now, in part one, if you haven't listened already, we talked a lot about archetypes and parts work. And so I think that's a way to get at these parts of ourselves. But it's interesting that you really started to awaken. You went deeply into the spiritual journey. You took that into a relationship. Didn't necessarily work out as well.
More than once.
Right? Because we're trying to help awaken others. And I really appreciate the honesty and the vulnerability of which you're bringing forward, how you still were in that narcissist behavior type of wanting to control, of wanting to, but I think the intentions start to shift a little bit. At least that's what I'm feeling.
Indeed.
Is that your intention was shifting towards, I want to be the helper, the hero. And yet it's always coming back to ourselves. And I say that deeply from, the empath part of me that does always want to help and wants to help others awaken and do the work. And yet we have to keep doing the work for ourselves. And there's no one to heal other than to know thyself, and to really go back to that place within us where we are healed and whole, which brings me to bring up A Course in Miracles. We're both students of A Course in Miracles. It's something that I think really brings us back to understanding love and fear on a whole different level, and understanding that anything that isn't love is based in a fear that we have. And it also talks a lot about special relationships. And so perhaps that's an angle to take from a healing perspective in your journey. Was that something that also helped you understand more about your particular narcissistic behaviors when it came to the spiritual narcissist part? Was that something that helped ground you back, or was that not part of your journey?
Well, no, I like your framing of that. And, as I listen to that a little bit more, most certainly it helped me in my journey. And because you referenced something that is very near and dear to a narcissist, not just a spiritual narcissist, but a narcissist. And that is this idea of special relationship. And in that special relationship for a narcissist is a special relationship with their narcissism and the drive that keeps them in. So that is a very near and dear and precious part of a narcissist life. Although we didn't know that at the time, but we see in the world the very insidious but also quite vicious aspect of narcissism that will do anything to protect themselves in that place of their own wounding. And so as I transitioned away from let's just say as I moved in the spectrum along from the extremities of narcissism into the spiritual journey, into the becoming more empathic, more compassionate, more kind in my life. In other words, kind of finding my own heart and allowing my own heart to show me the way, and allowing it to, was that next part of the journey. But again, the specialness of that narcissist was still feeling the wound of that wounded child, so to speak, that abandoned child, that part of me as a young man wanting to become a man and not knowing the pathway to do that. Then that place of specialness did remain in my journey, at least through the initial part of the spiritual journey.
Yeah, I feel like this is such a important topic, because bringing up this special relationship is, in any romantic relationship, we like to make it special. I'm not saying that being in partnership isn't a wonderful thing, but I think the word special is thinking that love comes outside of you. And why that becomes so powerful in a narcissistic, especially narcissistic empath relationship, is that protection of that specialness, the protection of wanting to make sure that you're keeping that person in your life, that you're not going to lose love, because you're in a sense, and correct me if I say something that you feel isn't consistent with being a narcissist and having those feelings. Sure. Is that there's an emptiness inside of you because you haven't integrated into knowing that you are already perfect and whole. Most people haven't integrated that, but that there's that longing for the loss that you didn't receive as a small child, that abandonment wound, that not feeling seen, that not feeling heard. And so what I find so ironic is that the thing that a narcissist wants the most, the behaviors that they do, are like the opposite of what's necessary to actually keep it. You have a beautiful, loving empath person in your life, and then there's this protective mechanism that comes in. And as a result, you're trying to control and manipulate what you see as this special relationship. Mm-hmm. It seems like such a dichotomy. Mm-hmm. It seems like if you have that abandonment wound, you attract an empath into your life, that you would do everything in your power from a different space and place to support them, to honor them, to embrace them. Mm-hmm. And yet it's the flip of it. And it's like the opposite, where you're belittling that dynamic, to me, I think will forever be a quandary in my mind as to why and how that has to be the dynamic for an abandonment wound.
Yeah, it is ironic, isn't it?
Yes.
And in just in listening to what you're sharing, I'm seeing flashes of moments when I, was in the gaslighting phase, or even with the people, person that I wanted to, stay deeply connected to in this way, or just dismissive. And just to lean in a little bit to that a little further, that energy of the abandonment, there's no degree or in this area, and maybe other things that happened in your life. And so I don't want to be dismissive of what other people have felt or experienced in their lives. I'm just sharing what has gone on for me. And it's a very deep and empty space. And it that deep and that well of that emptiness is also speaks to the energy that rises from the depths of someone's being. Yeah. And Jung would say this is from your unconsciousness and the wounding of that, and the filing and layering and protection that really we go throughout our lives to protect that wounded place and to hold that. But the emptiness of that, I really am very empathetic for men that suffer deep depression along the way, or others that commit suicide. Seemingly they have everything imaginable, but the depth of that and the loneliness of that place is excruciating. And the narcissist, once they begin to become more vulnerable and aware of this energy, that leads to the next part of the healing, next part of the journey, from the extreme narcissist to the spiritual narcissist to moving beyond a narcissist that is more about being in relationship with that energy, being aware of that energy.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes some sense.
It
Beth.
does. And if one of the viewers out there listening right now feels that they identify with a narcissistic spectrum of behaviors, what would you say to them as to how they can start to step through?
Well, I've engaged on this in many instances, when, in particular with men, of course, and communicating man to man in this regard is very powerful and very profound. Women, serve and can support and do what they can do, but and this isn't about how to approach or engage or move beyond being in a narcissistic relationship. But from a man's perspective, it's I'm delicate with it, because in one way it's like, dude, get your shit together, man. You look at this part of your life and look what it's doing. So one part of me just comes, full throttle and lays it out, because sometimes that's what it takes for a narcissist to even start to think about it, and really start to look in the mirror about taking responsibility for their own lives, Beth. So there's that approach, which is really, is as simple and subtle as mirroring. And because I come from this journey, and because I'm have a toolbox, like you said, I'm able to speak to this in a way that perhaps somebody can get through to them. There's other subtler ways, but the fact of the matter is, the comforting does not work.
Yeah.
It's a very uncomfortable level of, just say, guiding or consulting or coaching. If you're doing coaching, it takes that kind of sense. And again, this is from man to man. This is not women that are supporting and helping men.
The other question that comes to mind is, if there's an empath listening, what would you say to them?
Well, first and foremost,
in a relationship with a narcissist.
Yeah, first and foremost, your safety and wellness are sanctosanct. There's no even taking any chance related to issues related to your own safety. And let's keep in mind that there's the idea of physical safety, but there's emotional safety. And if there's any indication where you're tiptoeing or you're swallowing or you're bearing, these things can go on for years. It's moving to an edge of either a major health crisis, emotional crisis, or other crisis in your life. So numero uno, pay attention, take care of number one, first and foremost. Should you choose to engage with a narcissist, should you make that choice, that's very delicate territory. And and it depends a lot on the degree of the narcissist that you're involved with. I have supported more than a few women that are engaged with other narcissists. As a matter of fact, it's quite frequent. and women that approach me and ask me, or that I work with, because I do still do some coaching work and guiding work. And it's a very common, and there becomes a place in time where, for the most part, they realize they need to leave.
Yeah.
But I often say, again, which we spoke to in our first or second conversation, or maybe both, was, is to understand why this is occurring and what is to be learned here. Even if you're in the transition from leaving to have left, it's still critical, because the pattern will continue. So, not to go on and on, but what I say is safety first, trust in yourself, to really embrace this as a moment, a critical moment in your own life. And this is about your own safety, but you, in particular, if you have children or you have other things, we do these things to rise beyond the family lineage. You spoke a little bit about this in family constellation work earlier. So there's powerful reasons to do this. Also, to seek counsel and to seek help from qualified people that are actually willing to confront this issue in a big way. If you do choose to speak with a narcissist and you do choose to engage, there's different approaches. One would be as simple as a letter, even to begin to broach the ideas. The other thing would be to do your best to see if you could sit down and have a real conversation, and be prepared in those moments for abrupt actions and abruptness in voice. I know this space of abruptness, and not so pleasant. So it's just a matter of being fully present. But the truth of your truth to your power, it will set you free. And I know that's a cliche, but when it's abusive physically and emotionally, then it's time to emerge and do it now, because our children need this, you need this, we need this. And that's why I'm doing this today with you, is for our audience.
Yeah. And I want to touch on the leaving part, but before we do, I feel called to share something else that oftentimes I've referred to myself as a super empath. And I'm not saying that, so I want to define super empath. I'm not saying that for any type of superiority. I'm saying that because, as an awakened being, someone who's done a lot of work and has a very robust spiritual toolbox, there's an ability that I have to feel my feelings. And for people who haven't maybe done the work, or they're on the journey, you start to recognize, wow, I didn't know how much I had numbed myself. So, when we're kids, we feel everything. That's why we scream and we cry and we carry on in the moment that we're feeling the feeling. And somewhere along the line, just naturally, we get told, calm down, don't have those feelings, because we're in the middle of a restaurant and we're not. And that can be really, really healthy. So I'm not saying that it's not healthy to discipline, because it is. But what we do just in a normal situation is we start to control our emotions, because we want to fit in. We don't want to be seen as a crybaby. We don't want to be overly emotional. We don't want to be out of control, just in general. And there's a fine balance between a healthy feeling our feelings and controlling them. So I feel, for me, what's happened is, as I've been on my awakening journey, I've allowed myself to feel so much more and so deeply, to a point where, and this is where it comes a little bit more into the empath, is when we can feel other people's feelings. When we're so open and we have allowed our bodies, because our bodies know before our mind. We think our mind is running the show. Most of us, we think that, but it's not. Our body is running the show. And there's been a lot of research. I won't go too far into this, but even at HeartMath, where they've looked at the heart, and Deepak Chopra talks about this a lot too, that your heart anticipates what's coming next, because it's reading the field. It's reading the field of energy. And so as we become more and more empathic, and you know this as well, being an empath, that you start to feel people's feelings. And I think narcissists are also very much, it can be that way as well, because they're reading the room. They had to fine tune that skill. They had to fine tune reading their partner's emotions, reading, ooh, are they just about to leave? Or what's their next move? What do I need to do to prevent it? What do I need to do to control it? But as a super empath, we're actually oftentimes in a narcissistic relationship transmuting the projections that are coming at us from the person that we love who has the narcissistic tendencies. Now, even if it's not a romantic relationship, it could be a parental relationship where we're still trying to help the other person. We're trying to transmute the emotion. We're trying to deflect the emotion. We're trying to not absorb the emotion, but oftentimes what happens is we continually absorb the emotion. So I'm speaking very much from my own experience that unknowingly at times, like it wasn't that I wanted to, it wasn't even that I was trying to play the hero. It was that my body is porous energetically. And because I love and adore someone, I do want to help. And that oftentimes left me open. It left me open to, okay, let me sit through this. Let me allow this person to express. Let me be here. Let me hold this space for them. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying that it's about really having the discernment, awareness, and boundaries when it's hurting you. And so that's something that I've really had to step through and learn myself, because there were times where I realized I need to remove myself from the situation because I'm taking on too much of the anger. I'm taking on, even though sometimes I knew it wasn't about me, it was about their needing to release. But I was the punching bag, figuratively speaking, not physically speaking, to receive that energy and that negativity that was impacting me and dampening my light, because I had to go inward and transmute and removing myself was the way to do it. Now, if you're questioning, where you're at in this and should I stay or should I go? I think having that awareness of knowing, whoa, I'm transmuting way too much, because your body can do only so much. And then you are going to start to invite in disease and different things, because you're not at ease. You're on. And the trauma response to this, and I'm not trying to make it overly dramatic, I'm trying to make it real, that there is a trauma response that the body has. 100%. And I remember one night when I was home in my own bed alone, I was sleeping and I had a dream, and I was in a building, and there was some disarray outside, and then there was something happening inside the building that was very specific to me that just made me feel fear. My whole body was just lit up with fear, just electrified with fear. And then it was that moment where you go, okay, I'm dreaming. Let me wake myself up. And so I woke myself up, and I still felt this full body fear. Every single cell was just lit up.
Wow.
And I woke up the next morning and I was like, I know what happened. I was releasing what my body had been absorbing. And so it's kind of like an animal that needs to shake it off. When they have trauma, they shake it off. Little Miss Lily,
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so my body subconsciously was trying to shake it off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am enabling a situation that is very unhealthy for me and also for them. So I think that as an empath, and why I say super empath, is that I'm absorbing, I'm transmuting, that I had to come to a place of recognition that, whoa, this isn't love either. Because I'm not loving myself, I'm self-abandoning myself. And I have to come back to me,
That's right.
my energy system, and caring for my inner compass so that I'm not off kilter, because that's what happens. You get really off kilter. You get, I'm a very true north person. I'm very connected to source. I'm very connected to myself. I'm very connected to my love. And when I started to realize that I was overgiving my love to try to save someone else, that's where I said, wait, I gotta do something different here. And that was a really tough spot. And that's going to lead us into leaving, because as an empath, leaving is, when we talked about this in the last segment, the most difficult thing to do, because there is a no-win situation. You leave out of love. You still love that person. You love yourself. And it's still going to get twisted into the empath being the bad guy. The empath being the one that's abandoning, you left me, you. And so it still comes back to that place of accountability, which you've spoken so eloquently about and demonstrated, and are sitting here today showing what it's like to take that deep accountability and go deeply into that wound. And it's a lifelong journey.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I'm living it while we're talking. In many ways, it's fascinating but powerful. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Those are great insights, Beth.
Yeah. And the juice in this, and I don't mean to lighten it to say that, but the juicy bits for the empath is we have to learn our own lessons. We are not victims. I never felt I was a victim, although at times I felt like, oh, why is this happening to me? Wait, why did I call this in? Especially with someone that I really adore, and that I love those beautiful parts of the person. So, but we have to love ourselves, and the selfishness that an empath can feel. I just want to offer a reframe that it's being self-full, that you're not selfish, you're taking care of yourself, because the age-old analogy of put your oxygen mask on first is in this case as well. That is where the empath's shadow self comes in, thinking that, oh no, I can take care of them, I can take care of me, I can take care of everybody. It's like, no, we really have to anchor in to holding our love and our light, and shining the light and showing the way, and allowing people to make their choices of whether they're going to not necessarily follow from a leadership perspective or anything like that. It's just, are they wanting to see the light within themselves? And in order to get there, they have to go through the darkness.
Right. Maybe more than once.
Yeah. I mean, I think even if you're not a narcissist and you're on this awakening path, you know what it feels like to go through the dark night of the soul.
Maybe many times.
Many times. I wish it was only once.
The beauty about that, if you're feeling into that darkness or that dark night of the soul, which is it's scary and it's unknown. But ultimately what I have found is generally those follow-on dark nights or follow-on energetics of where things are pretty dark or pretty bleak are softened a bit. They soften over time.
Yeah.
And as we become more in relationship with these parts of ourselves, either as a narcissist or as an empath.
Yeah.
But the key is to take that action. Doing nothing is not an option here.
Right.
It's not, because otherwise other things will, as spirit works, as the universe, whatever you believe in, is going to push you or force you out of that place of complacency related to these very delicate parts of ourselves.
That dark night, that dark hole, I think narcissists experience it either by running themselves and just finding someone else, or being left. I would love to hear, I'm just curious from your perspective, have you been left, or were you always the one to leave?
Well, I have left and I have been left.
Okay.
So I left in the narcissist phase, the early phase of the spectrum. And I've been left. Well, I've had a few relationships in the spiritual phase of it, two of which of the three I was left in different degrees or another. But the bottom line there was I left myself.
Yeah.
I left myself. And it's obvious, that a narcissist is not in their own truth and depth. And then the spiritual narcissist is still playing into that dynamic, but really abandoning themselves. So the idea is to really pick up to where we are bringing forth the abandoned, wounded child in my particular case.
Yeah.
And so where I'm not leaving that part of my life or that part of my trauma or my wound behind, but at the same time, the projection continues, and the projection will have people move away from you in due course, even though there's deep depth to the relationship, there's deep heart presence to the relationship. But there comes a point in time where becomes very recognizable. And it's not a matter of, oh, they're not doing their work or they're stuck in their own part of their journey. Yeah, there's a greater dynamic. It falls to two, of course, in this phase of spiritual narcissism recovery.
Yeah.
So it becomes more that the initial phase is a narcissist, you just break, you leave that, or the narcissist will leave.
Yeah.
But in the next phase, it's more subtle, and there's more going on in those kind of dynamics. Hopefully that made some sense.
Yeah. I would be interested to hear your perspective of when you were left, and how I remember you saying to me in a conversation outside of these recordings, something about when you cut the head off the snake.
Yes.
So I would like to hear, if you're willing to share, some of the behaviors that you witnessed yourself have, or just in general, what narcissists might do when they're left.
Yes. Well, in the extreme part of the spectrum, it's pretty obvious when you cut the head of the snake off. If something needs to be just terminated and taken care of for a lot of different reasons that are extreme, then that's the action. So I don't underestimate what that could mean for some of you that are experiencing narcissists to this degree or another. And I don't mean to be Blake or not hopeful in this way, but coming from a narcissist and the extreme of it, it's what prioritizes what's most important for you, your safety, your trust, the well-being of your children, these kind of things. That means that's it, done, period. No further discussion.
Yeah.
And the other piece of the phasing, I'd say, what I experienced was that your question?
Yeah,
or
and
what,
also
what was it specific to that?
The no contact, if you have an opinion on that, from your perspective, but also now perhaps even from the empath's perspective, if someone's having to cut the relationship and really move away from it.
Yeah.
A lot of psychiatrists, psychologists will say you have to go no contact because the trauma bonds can be so strong.
Yes.
That especially if there's children involved, that you have to really cut this, and that creates a really wild response.
Well, I've experienced that.
Yeah.
And so again, it's to the degree I haven't experienced in the most severe state. I've experienced more in the conscious state. Yeah. So I can speak to what that means in that context. But yes to no contact. Yes. And then.
Yes, from a narcissist perspective or from a safety of an empath perspective?
From a safety of an empath perspective. Okay. And then as it relates from a spiritual narcissist perspective, I've experienced that. And I have mixed feelings on that. But I think it's still applicable even in a seemingly conscious relationship, even in a relationship that's been grounded in a level of friendship. And I've experienced this, and I respect the person that is in need of no contact. Mm-hmm. It's not what I choose or how I would handle that in my own loving, conscious way, but it's how somebody else is choosing to do
Yes.
that, and how they feel that's necessary, and why that's important for them. And it's perfectly fine to disagree in this way consciously. And I get why they have made that choice based on their own personal healing and trauma journey.
Right.
And they may not want to deal with an evolution of healing or consciousness. And this is in friendship at this point in time. It doesn't even have to be in a romantic situation. If we're lucky, we can have people that come forward in our lives that become near and dear friends. And I am so blessed to have that with relationships that I've had. And it's a journey, but it's about respecting another if they choose to do that. And that it is what it is. And it's very painful and difficult, because there is the depth of the genuine love that's there, but wanting to hold it in empathy, to be really empathetic around it, and knowing, well, it takes two to do this.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point about the narcissist and the spiritual narcissist, because that to me speaks to the narcissist who's completely unconscious in many ways to their own awareness and their own accountability, versus a spiritual narcissist who's like, oh, okay, I've woken up to this and I am taking accountability. I am working on this on a much deeper level. And so I can feel the difference of that when you're doing so much work and you're feeling, that you're in this awakening space that, do I still have to be left? Do I still have to go to that no contact? And I think that your response was brilliant for an empath, and that you do have to feel into where you are. I would say from the empath side of it, that it's because our desire is to give and give and give almost at all costs. Not everyone, but a lot of empaths, and overgive, that if someone is moving into that more spiritual narcissist place, that it's a beautiful opportunity. This isn't a judgment. I don't know anything about your relationship, so I'm not saying it to you specifically. I'm saying that if you can, as an empath, stick with it, I think that's really beautiful. But only if you've done your own shadow work and you have strong boundaries, strong discernment, can speak your truth, right? This takes a really refined toolbox of an empath to have done their work to stay. And if they can't, then I think there's still that opportunity that they may have to just protect themselves to do their deeper inner work, because that bond and that desire, we see this in tough love a lot of times talked about with parents, especially parents who have children that are maybe drug addicted, and you just want to keep giving because you love that person so much. And so there is this, I don't mean a bad addiction, but I mean an addiction to helping, an addiction to enabling. And that's where the shadow side of the empath has to be called forward to say, am I enabling? Thinking that I am helping when I'm actually just not helping myself. And so I really like that you bring that forward, that there's, again, this, not only the spectrum of narcissism, but then there's this phase of narcissism that if someone does get to the awareness, does get to the, ooh, okay, wait, I need to take accountability. And then you move into the, okay, I'm really taking accountability. I'm really working here. I'm really in this. I'm really in this to move beyond it. That it brings a whole nother level of softness to that next relationship that probably can help you because you're willing to do the work.
Well, indeed. And at that place, from an empath perspective, this is assuming that empath is doing the work as well.
Right.
And that empath is willing to go to the depths of doing that work. And many are not, just as like a narcissist is a higher degree of not. Empaths have more availability to say, I need to do the work to move beyond my own shadow my own codependency of wanting to rescue a narcissist and do these kind of things. So in this reference point that I spoke to, everybody's in their journey, and the beauty of that relationship is I let go of the piece of my narcissism to embrace the deeper friendship and love that was there, to honor that person's journey, and to matter of fact, to embrace it as the beauty of our differences, to see the mosaic of her life and my life, and find a way to hold a higher ground, and to meet the challenges that are still present. And so everybody is in their place, and whether that returns to a place of continued exploration, who knows? It's in God's hands, like you referenced there a bit about families. But ultimately, it's an invitation for someone, and that's could be a bit too much for people in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And when we confront narcissism or empathy, at least as I have, it is an invitation for those that we're in relationship, whether we know it or not, to do the same for themselves.
Yeah.
Because in the presence of our shadow, or our vulnerabilities, or our ugliness, if we want to call it that, it's an invitation and gives permission for others to be the same. Just like intimacy and love is an invitation. And when we want these things, but when we get there, we go, hell no, I'm not ready. I don't want to get near that. See you later. This does happen.
Yeah.
And I'm experiencing this a bit.
Yeah. Well, I keep wanting to say yes, and
yes, of course.
I feel that the empath also has a choice to make, and so does the narcissist, and the spiritual narcissist, I should say, of what is my soul contract with this person, and what is the karmic entanglement that I have. There's so many angles to look at this, but it's also, am I here to, and I don't like the words I'm going to say, but sacrifice myself for this one person if I know that my soul's mission is to help awaken a much broader body. And it's not that it's your job to awaken others. It's that you may have a mission to shine your light so brightly that to come back, and to the analogy of empath narcissist entanglement or not, if you're in a relationship that is literally pulling you back off of your soul's mission, that is a time to stop, pause, reflect. Is my soul contract finished with this person? So sometimes our contract is over, and it brought us to a particular place, and we don't need to continue out of martyrdom to stay with that one person, because your soul contract just may simply be done. And that is so important to dig into that. And it may be that you have karma that you came to, unentangle. But once that's done, it may be time to move on, even though it's that person that the spiritual narcissist is working on themselves.
Indeed. And now in this phase of the journey, even though the empath is working on themselves.
Yes, we're all working on ourselves.
This evolution, at least in this journey that I've been on with this, it speaks to this. But again, we move forward. Have we learned the lesson? And the contract is complete. The cord will be cut, and we will move forward. And many of us have relationships that reappear in our lives for review or for consideration. They may reappear physically. They may reappear emotionally and psychologically, which is typically the case. Even unbeknownst to ourselves, we're still tuning to emotional fields and traumas like we do. But ultimately, it's the invitation, because we're here to move forward. Yeah. And now we're speaking of moving into the next phase of our journey, and all of these kind of parts of this. Wow, it's quite remarkable in so many ways.
Yeah,
and so difficult and challenging and painful in others. Yeah.
Well, I've loved this conversation. I feel like there's so much here for anyone, even if you're not in an empath narcissist entanglement. But if you are, it is something that will either crush you or catapult you, and it's your choice. And I think the information shared here from both of us, coming from different perspectives and having a lot of evolution and doing a lot of our own deep inner work,
Indeed.
of the
Still
shadow.
doing it.
Yes, the
Still
shadow
on
and the
it.
light. Yes,
Yeah.
we all are. It's a real inspiration. And again, I want to thank you for the depth of your vulnerability to come forward to have this conversation. Again, to invite me into your home and into your heart. And one last thing that comes to mind before we close up is, because we're sitting in this beautiful 3-acre estate that has Mother Nature at its finest, I think we would be remiss to not talk about the power that nature has in our own individual healing and connection to source. And so before we close out, I just wanted to hear from you. What's been your experience with Mother Nature, and how has that helped you with your journey?
Well, she's been my savior and my love, and my greatest mirror. And yeah, we see in the mirror, we see with our contact and connection with the ones we love. But when we begin to see in the mirror the beauty and love of who we are, this is what she does. And she's doesn't put any conditions. It's just a place of being present with the gifts of Mother Nature. And the Navajo and Hopi speak to this as they walk in the beauty way. They walk in beauty. And this is because they're walking in reverence and deep respect for nature.
Yeah.
And of course, nature doesn't simply reflect beauty, but she offers the deepest insights into the secrets of the universe, and how we can live in symbiosis with Earth, and which is the Earth within ourselves. And the narcissist journey home begins to come to its place of settling and deep awareness when we return to that place of our own inner earth, our own inner ground. And Mother Nature offered a lot of these deep insights and showed me the way to stay with the journy. And
I know you talk about this in one of your books.
Okay.
Remind me which book.
Well, all of them. I did, but it most certainly in the Earthkeeper, on developing the future. I speak to it, and I speak to it at a different level in the Divine Genius, another one of my books, The Unlearning Curve. A narcissist must become very good at unlearning, which is a very very powerful process for all of us.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's, as the earth goes, so do I.
Yeah.
As I go, so does the earth.
Yeah.
And this is the piece of the journey where the seeking ends, and the great work continues.
Yeah.
But the joy of it,
Yeah.
and the expression of it, and life and abundance of it becomes just part of every day and every moment.
Yeah.
So I do thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I want to just say, from an empath perspective, but just from a human perspective, that Mother Nature has been such a teacher for me.
Yes.
I know I describe in my book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, about how I became a flower whisperer, which was completely unexpected, because that sounds like, whoa. But yet I was in my big corporate job and couldn't meditate. And Spirit said, get a camera. And I started photographing orchids in Hawaii. and
Right.
realized that, wow, just doing observational flower photography was quieting my
How
mind to a
beautiful.
place where I could connect to source. And then eventually I still photograph flowers, but I communicate with flowers. And because my mind is quieted, I get messages from them. So they're actually speaking to me. Ultimately, it's my higher self
Yes.
just coming through and bringing through the pearls of wisdom that I need, or sometimes the encouragement or whatever that needs to come through to just speak to my heart, directly from source. And that's also led me to a lot of other ways to work with Mother Nature that just fills your cup. So if you're feeling chaotic, you're feeling like, the energies are, your mind is creating this chaos, just go into Mother Nature, lay on the ground, gaze at a flower, ground. Yeah, take your shoes off. And if you can, if it's not cold, if it's cold, then find another way to connect with Mother Nature, hug a tree. Lots of different ways that we can really just feel the pureness of what source is offering us through the flowers, through the plants, through the trees, through the ground. And it's such a basic thing, and it's free. So it's an easy way to connect in, and it takes practice only from the perspective of the mind. Our bodies are soaking it in at every moment that we spend in Mother Nature, but it's our mind that wants to keep telling the story. So quiet that darn mind and get into the heart and anchor in, as we did here in this 3-part series. So again, thank you so much for this time together. I think so much will come of it. If you're viewing, please write in the comments if there's something that came through that was a real pearl, something more that you want to know. You can always join me on Beth Bell Live on YouTube and ask questions on my Sunday show at 11:11 a.m. Pacific time. And give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I would love to see you here in the future. And I look forward to many more conversations. I think, Adam, this is probably just the start of probably many. So again, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for being you and bringing so much to this vitally important question and these big things around narcissism and empaths. And this is a time of a tremendous change, and this is certainly something that we're all grappling with one way or another. So may it find its home and with the right people and healing their hearts and their souls, and guiding us to what we're being asked to show up to do in our lives. So big hug to you, and thank you for having me, and thank you for holding the space in the way you do. I appreciate it immensely.
Thank you. All right, to everyone, wishing you much bliss and love on the journey. Namaste.
If this episode brought clarity or resonance, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs this message today. Your engagement amplifies the light and helps this work reach the hearts that are ready to awaken. Subscribe to follow the full 3-part series on the empath narcissist entanglement and to receive access to all upcoming wisdom sessions and insights. Let's heal our hearts, reclaim our power, and rise to the next level of humanity together in sovereignty.